Yesterday, Joe Biden spoke, I guess, to the world in regards to what's going on in Israel and Palestine. Obviously, I've been off the air for the past couple of days watching this horror show, I guess, unravel and begin its descent into more unraveling. But here is Joe Biden. He is speaking, I guess it was taking place, I'm not sure what time it was, but he was at the White House and addressing the fighting between Israel and Hamas.
Bloodthirstiness brings to mind the worst rampages of ISIS. This is terrorism. But sadly, for the Jewish people, it's not new. This attack has brought to the surface painful memories and the scars left by a millennia of anti-Semitism and genocide of the Jewish people. So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. And we will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse. Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination. Its stated purpose is the annihilation of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. They use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Hamas offers nothing but terror and bloodshed with no regard to who pays the price. The loss of innocent life is heartbreaking. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the right to respond, indeed has a duty to respond to these vicious attacks.
I agree with his sentiment about Hamas. I think it's obvious. They massacred civilians, and in my mind, there is no justification for that type of massacre, ever. And I frankly, I feel that way across the board in killing of civilians whatsoever. My concern at this point, though, is that in offering, I also think that Biden should, it's perfectly legitimate for him to offer full support to Israel. But I hope and sort of doubt at this point that Biden has suggested any constraints on the nature of the response by Israel. Early, I think, in the wake of these attacks, there were members of the State Department who were urging restraint on Twitter, and I think they deleted those tweets. There's been reports of that, anyways. Nevertheless, when you hear the statements from the Israeli defense minister that they're going to cut off food and power, fuel, which they effectively have done at this point. There is apparently no more power in the country. And thereby they will then shortly cut off really any ability to even record what's going on there. I think there are some journalists there. 7 have already died. 2 Israeli journalists have died. 7 Palestinian journalists have died. You got UN staffers, like we mentioned, dead from the bombing. And they have essentially cut off the only escape valve and the only aid valve to Gaza in Egypt by bombing the Rafah gate. And it seems like a concerted effort to make it impossible for information to even be, in some instances, recorded in Gaza, never mind in real-time reports. And it's going to end up killing who knows how many hundreds, thousands of civilians.
Let alone the lack of electricity going to the hospitals. There are patients in Gaza who are undergoing cancer treatment, who are undergoing, kidney dialysis, that need electricity on a daily basis to continue their treatments. And then that's to say nothing of the thousands and thousands that will be wounded and mortally injured who will need that hospital care.
Right. And that even includes, from my understanding, reports of at least one of the Israelis who were kidnapped. Israel, I can't remember which minister it was, basically said, we're not that interested in those that have been kidnapped at this point. That's not our primary interest. And, again, there's no justifying the actions of Hamas, but I don't think there's any justifying in engaging in bombing, and that is going to is going to lead to the deaths of thousands of innocents. I just don't.
It's a war crime. It's collective punishment. That is what is that. That is definitionally a war crime.
And so from a moral standpoint, I just don't. Obviously, what Hamas did is, in some respects, more sort of viscerally barbaric, but only because it's person to person. You don't see a family that you blow up with a missile from the sky, and you don't see their bodies under the rubble, and you don't see images of a pre-existing life. I mean, the images coming out of southern Israel are incredibly disturbing and shocking. But the whole point of the U.S. in this dynamic is to urge restraint in these moments. And it's disappointing. I mean, if Biden didn't urge this restraint in private, it is really, it's an abdication. And aside from that assessment, there is absolutely no reason to believe that this is going to fundamentally alter. Israel can go in, they can kill thousands upon thousands. They can kill thousands upon thousands of Hamas fighters. I've seen projections that maybe there's 40,000, 1,500 of the Hamas fighters, the terrorists, were killed in southern Israel. We don't know how many actually came through, because obviously some went back and took prisoners back. But you're going to radicalize a whole new generation of Hamas fighters. Half of Gaza is under the age of 18.
And that's also the result of what we saw. When you have a country where there is actually zero hope, I mean, that's been stamped out. They've been under the thumb of the Israeli occupation for decades at this point, when the population skews very young. As you say, half of the population in Palestine is under the age
in Gaza,
is under the age of our children, but still the median age in Palestine is, I think, a little over 19 years old.
Yes, not much higher.
So the point there is that when there's no hope and no economic opportunity, and there's no real ability to change your situation, that just is the exact kind of funnel system into radical groups like Hamas, and we've seen this before. You can draw a line to a group like ISIS, for example, that was created in the wake of the destruction that the United States created in the Middle East. This is the kind of radicalization funnel that we are trying to cut off. Like, we're trying to cut off groups like Hamas at their roots, as opposed to then imposing collective punishment on an entire desperate population that doesn't have clean water and doesn't have the ability to change their situation in any meaningful way. The power lies with Israel in this instance, and Netanyahu, he cannot afford to reflect right now or take some sort of measured approach because of his domestic political situation.
Yeah, and nor I think is he inclined to. And also, you look at, you have people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir who are self-avowedly fascist.
Yep.
I think Smotrich even used the word, but I don't know that Ben-Gvir would have that much of an issue with it. He would call it something else, maybe. But and really, so aside from the fact that Gaza is essentially and continued bombing and destruction of Gaza and is like a radicalization machine, essentially. The other problem that Israel has is that the reason why, at least the early reports that I read, the reason why there was so little human protection on that border with Gaza is because so much of the IDF had been sent up into the West Bank to function as essentially, guards for fundamentalist settlers to engage in their own mini versions of pogroms themselves. Certainly not as violent and as what the Hamas terrorists did, but dispossessing people of their land and basically ethnic cleansing on the West Bank. And I guess the point is, and it remains to be seen if there will be a reckoning with this at one point in Israel, but they, as a country, do not have the material resources needed to oppress these many people going forward in the future. It's just simply unsustainable. And for a long time, they had kid themselves and said that it is sustainable to themselves. But I think I hope that there is a reckoning that it's unsustainable, that they need to figure out a new path forward. Yeah. Because that's the only way that anything's going to change. They're going to mow the lawn, as they say, in Gaza, but the grass will grow back.
But that's what I meant about, just really quickly, about Netanyahu, this situation being untenable. What you described, the intelligence failure, the fact that those troops were deployed to help with the settlements, that meant that there were fewer troops that had traditionally been on that southern border, and a lot of domestic papers in Israel are being critical of Netanyahu for that. So instead of letting that moment hang, he's going to go full bore on Palestinian dehumanization so that his ass is not on the line in this way.
Right. Yeah, he has plenty of motivation to do it politically and also in terms of his coalition. And I would imagine that, there's very little constituency within Israel right now for restraint. And in many respects, that's where the U.S. used to be helpful in this conflict. And that stopped around the time of the Bush administration. In fact, they pushed that the election that brought Hamas to power. I should say the Hamas was, I'm sure you've gone over this over the past couple of days, but Hamas was was elected 17 years ago. There hasn't been another vote. Hamas itself was essentially midwifed by the Israeli government.
This is a quote, from Netanyahu in 2019. Talking to the Likud members of his party, anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza from the Palestinians in the West Bank.
You can look at, there's a Wall Street Journal piece from 2009 by Andrew Higgins, retired Israeli official Avner Cohen. 30 years earlier, in about 1980, 79, Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation, said Mr. Cohen, who worked in Gaza for more than two decades, responsible for the religious affairs in the region until 94. Mr. Cohen watched the Islamist movement take shape, muscle aside secular Palestinian rivals, and then morph into what is today Hamas. Instead of trying to curb Gaza's Islamists from the outset, says Mr. Cohen, Israel for years tolerated and in some cases encouraged them as a counterweight to the secular nationalists of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And Yasser Arafat. I mean, this is, this is years in the making. It doesn't justify anything that Hamas did. I would love to see sitting next to Ariel Sharon and Yasser Arafat in the sort of trials against humanity, and they're both sitting there in hellfire. I would love to put Netanyahu and all of the leadership of Hamas to join them. But nevertheless, if the idea is to have less killing and more human rights, none of this is going to help.